right now on American Sunrise. Joe Biden is headed to the picket line in Detroit to meet with striking union auto workers. Will this be a good look for the president, or could it turn into a PR nightmare? PR guru Adam Weiss joins us with his analysis.
And Trump haters are on the march today. They have blown a gasket yet again over Trump, this time attempting to buy a gun yesterday in South Carolina. Or did he? We have the details. We'll let you know the reason why Trump's Second Amendment rights appear to have been taken away.
And Joe Biden's cognitive health declining rapidly. We'll talk to a doctor who says Joe is much worse than we even thought.
And Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna joins us to discuss the impeachment battle and the looming government shutdown on Capitol Hill. All of that and more as American Sunrise starts right now. We've got your back as you start your day.
Articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
We watch every morning while getting ready for work.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Gina, live with you from West Palm Beach with my cohort over there in Washington, D.C., David Brody. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I got 7 hours sleep, and look, at my age, I'll take all the beauty sleep I can get for sure. 7 hours. I don't know about you, Gina. 7 hours for me. I'm good.
Oh, no,
7 hours. That's great.
7 hours is like record when you do a morning show. You start trying to tell people at like 8, 9, 10 o'clock you need to go to bed, and they just don't understand. And boy, if you can squeeze in 7 hours, yeah, you are a beautiful man the next day because you got all that beauty sleep.
Oh, I got beauty sleep and Terrance Bates in Denver.
Woo!
I've got the Mac and 7 hours of beauty sleep. Are you kidding me? Terrance Bates, you're the man that never sleeps. Hello. Good to see you. You have headlines. It's always great to see you, Terrance.
David, always good to see you, and you don't need beauty sleep, my friend. You wake up just like you look. A busy week of campaigning is already underway for President Trump. He kicked it off on Monday afternoon with a rally in South Carolina, which, of course, hosts the First in the South primary.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office shortly after I win the presidency, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It's going to be settled. I know them both. It's going to be settled quickly.
Monday's rally in the Charleston area will likely be a preview of what to expect when the 45th president speaks before union workers in Michigan tomorrow. From border security to closing the education department and everything in between, Mr. Trump touched on a number of issues Monday. But don't be surprised to hear more of this tomorrow.
To rapidly reduce inflation, I will end Joe Biden's war on American energy and reclaim energy independence. 3 years ago, we were totally energy independence, heading over to energy dominance, right, Russell? For our next term, I've set the ambitious goal of achieving the #1 lowest cost of energy and electricity anywhere in any major industrial nation on earth, and we'll be there within 6 months.
Mr. Trump also making headlines during his stop in the Charleston area after a staffer posted a video saying the former president bought a pistol at a local gun store. Well, that staffer later clarified that Mr. Trump wanted to buy a Glock with his likeness on it. Given the various indictments against President Trump, there were some questions about whether he could legally purchase that gun. And after taking some thunder away from presidential primary opponent Senator Tim Scott and former Governor Nikki Haley in their own backyards rather than on stage at the GOP debate tomorrow, Mr. Trump will instead follow up Monday's rally with a speech before union members in Michigan. He'll then visit California Friday to speak at the state's GOP convention. It'll be an encore to the GOP primary debate that he's skipping 2 days before. And on Sunday, the former president will travel to Iowa for a Commit to Caucus event where he'll deliver policy remarks focused on agriculture. Just like we're not forgetting about the victims of the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, we're also keeping an eye on the recovery in Maui, Hawaii after the deadly wildfires there. As the sun begins to come up over the island, more residents who lost their homes in the disaster are expected back in Lahaina this morning, sifting through the rubble of what's left of their lives.
You know, people who haven't been in here since the fire are taken aback by the amount of and extent of the destruction. Talking to one property owner, he's like, Daryl, there's no wood. Nothing is here from our home.
The first of thousands began making their way home to the burn zone, which of course was once the flourishing community of Lahaina on Monday. The area has been off limits since the August 8th fire. More than 2,000 homes burned to the ground. Hundreds of people died. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll, of course, have more headlines throughout the morning. But now, let's get you back to Dr. G for today's Bible verse. And Dr. G, that last story I put in because I think we need to continue to pray for the people of Lahaina. You, of course, I think lived in Lahaina for a while.
I didn't live in Lahaina. You're right. I did live in Hawaii. I lived on the island of Oahu and there where all the Honolulu and all that area. So different island, but same culture, same people. And yes, we're still praying for them. Thanks, Terrance. The verse from Jesus Calling today is this one. It says, "And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split." That's from Matthew 27, verses 50 and 51. It's so cool to think that even though he's king of the universe, he's totally accessible to you. He is with you wherever you are. Nothing can separate you from his presence. And when he cried out on the cross, "It is finished," and the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, that right there opened the way for you to meet him face to face with no need of protocol, no need for a priest. He is the King of Kings, and he is your constant companion. So thanks to Jesus Calling for that today. Right, David? You agree with all that?
Oh, I was just listening to the sermon, and it's true. But your point is so well taken, and it's just important to understand that when you talked about it all being stripped away, that's what it really is all about. Religion is man-made. A relationship with Jesus has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with a personal relationship with him, and he's full of grace and redemption. So wonderful, Gina.
Through all the news, right? Through the good and the bad news. As Terrance reported, Joe Biden is rushing to Detroit to meet with union workers one day before President Trump. Trump announced last week that he would meet this Wednesday with striking auto workers in Michigan. And so Joe hurried to book a trip for a day earlier today. But it wasn't long ago that Biden had a disastrous meeting with union members in Detroit. David, do you remember when Joe launched into an expletive-laden rant after a union member accused him of being anti-Second Amendment? Biden said the man was full of the S word, what I will not say on this dignified network. We can't honestly even play the audio, but we've all heard it. We all looked at it in pre-production and said we can't play that. Oh, we can play the audio. We bleeped it, producer Jason just said in my ears. But Biden's handlers had better be cautious. Joe's dementia has advanced in the 3 years since that bad PR moment, hasn't it, David?
Yeah, for sure. And as a matter of fact, let's play the audio, shall we? Now, children, please step away from the television. Okay, have a look. Well, you can't hear it all that well, but the point is, put it this way, he didn't say malarkey. He said another word for malarkey, and he was upset with some of the workers there. But this is what but now all of a sudden he's going to be Mr. Joe Picket line today in Detroit. Give me a break, Gina.
Yeah, this continuing dementia as it is worsening, and we're going to talk a lot about this later on in the show. Yeah. We actually have a physician on who's going to discuss that with us and how much worse it is and what the signs are. But I happen to know from having several family members over the years with dementia, that temper that he's exhibiting publicly, that more and more outbursts. He'll get mad at himself just giving a speech sometimes, as you know. But anyway, will Joe's trip to the picket line today be a win? Or will it be a PR disaster? Well, we've got a PR guru. We're going to ask him right now. His name is Adam Weiss. Adam, welcome to the show. Trump is the blue-collar billionaire, and he can hang with the union auto workers. Could Trump win the UAW endorsement if Biden botches this trip and Trump nails this tomorrow?
Trump, isn't it interesting? On the debate stage tomorrow, we have Trump, instead of debating with the GOP contenders, he's out there with union workers. Who would ever thought that this new coalition that Trump creating would be coming to fold tomorrow? And you can't blame Joe Biden, the president, rushing to beat ex-President Trump to Michigan because, he's sitting back and go, wait a second, I'm the president. I can't have Trump keep controlling the news cycle every day. So I got to get out there. But with Joe, you never know what's going to happen. Every day there seems to be a blunder. The other day in front of the Congressional Black Caucus, he called LL Cool J boy. Yesterday was another misstep. So it's really tricky, the White House, because one place they want to control the news cycle, and in another sense, missteps with Joe that you never know what's going to come out of his mouth. So it's, they're playing this dangerous game of one step back, one step forward. And with Uncle Joe, it's really difficult to say what's going to come out of his mouth.
Well, we're going to see the visuals later today and the audio as well. I'd be curious to see what kind of gas we're going to get from Joe on the picket line for sure. He lost, Adam, as you know, he lost white, non-college educated voters by 35 points in 2020. So this is not his crowd. Scranton Joe, sorry, Scranton Joe, it's not your crowd at all. And now we have Donald Trump basically trashing Bidenomics the other day in South Carolina. Let's play a little bit of that.
So we've come today to the perfect place to talk about how we're going to end the economic catastrophe known as Bidenomics. He thought that was it was meant to be bad. It was originally done in the financial pages to talk about how bad it was. And he said, I love the name. I love the name. So now he goes around and he talks about it like it's good. It's really bad. Under my leadership, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. In fact, we did it twice, if you remember. We had to do it twice. And now we're going to do it a third time. But it's going to be bigger, better, stronger than ever before. Ever before.
Adam, talk about a PR nightmare. Bidenomics, I mean, Trump made it out to be, which it is, inflation, taxation, failure.
Yeah, basically everywhere you have to spend your money, from getting filling up your gas tank might cost you $80 to $100. Who would have thought $6 gas a tank? Getting a carton of milk is a fortune. Everything we have to do these days costs way more than it did under Trump, and that's what people care about. You can't sit there and rant and rave about Bidenomics. As much as he wants to tell the American people Bidenomics is working, they feel it in their pocket, and no matter how much the media wants to champion Bidenomics like it's a good thing, it's not. And, Trump has built this coalition because he fights for the working people. He fights for the people of Michigan. The old Scranton of Joe doesn't exist anymore. The old Joe of the working collar, blue collar people. It's not there anymore, especially his party. They're fighting for green energy.
Yeah.
If it was up to his party and their leftward policy, there would be no, gas tank cars anymore. We'd have electric outlets everywhere. We'd have a problem in America. And that's what, he's going in there and almost against what his party believes in these days. It's a strange visit.
Adam Weiss, appreciate it. Got to run.
Thanks,
when
Adam.
we come back on American Sunrise, Donald Trump went to buy a gun yesterday. Well, hold on for a second. The left went berserk. And basically all hell broke loose. We're going to tell you about it up next. Stick around.
Summerville, South Carolina, President Trump held a rally that we, of course, brought to you in full here on Rab, just as we always do. And President Trump also visited a gun shop where he wanted a custom engraved pistol. Watch this moment that went viral yesterday afternoon.
Like this from
And they sell well.
Yes, sir. They like well.
They like
I'm going to buy one.
Sir, if you want one, this one.
No, I want to buy one. I want to buy one.
Can I get one more picture with the president?
Go ahead.
And it's right here. I just want one.
Go ahead.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
That was really a sick-looking pistol, in my opinion. It had custom engravings featuring President Trump's own face, and the campaign originally said that he was going to buy the pistol, but leftist social media users were quick to point out that it's illegal for someone under felony federal indictment to purchase a firearm. Terrance, you know, he's being targeted politically by a weaponized justice system. He's not been convicted, but his Second Amendment rights have been stripped away. And I'll tell you something, this makes me angry. Terrance, how did you feel about it?
Well, you know, first of all, he didn't buy the gun. He wanted to buy the gun. He was considering buying the gun. He did not buy the gun. So no laws were broken. I understand in terms of the laws that right now, if you're someone indicted, particularly federally, there are laws on the book right now that restrict gun purchase and that kind of thing. But again, he didn't buy the gun. So it's really a moot point.
Yeah, and Terrance, to that point, the New York Times and others in the media running with these big headlines. Matter of fact, I see it right here. New York Times saying Trump tells gun store he'd like to buy a Glock, raising legal questions.
He wants to buy a gun.
Right, exactly. I mean, last time I checked, I never saw him take out the credit card. I never saw him go to the counter and purchase one. The staffer did say he bought one and then he retracted it. But, you know, in the New York Times article, they talk about how the staffer said that he bought the gun. And then later, 4 paragraphs later, they say, oh, actually, he retracted that statement. So, I mean, come on, these people are looking for any little thing with Trump. And you know, it's Gina, it's just sadly ridiculous.
But he should be able to buy one. Because we have innocent until proven guilty in this country. And I think it's just disgusting that they're preying on him like this, especially because this is completely trumped up, as we all know.
Well, whether he should be or not, the laws are what they are. And because he is under indictment legally, he can't. Whether he should be or not, we can argue that all day. But again, legally, based on what the law is right now, unfortunately, he can't.
Ridiculousness, total ridiculousness. But we'll keep watching this because I don't think we've heard the end of this. Maybe he'll buy the gun after this is all over. But that gun should be his if he wants it. They shouldn't be able to strip away his Second Amendment rights by coming up with fake charges by weaponizing a DOJ. Anyway, coming up, President Trump predicted that he might be indicted yet again. We will show you those comments he made on stage yesterday in South Carolina, and that's next right here on American Sunrise.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Newcastle, Delaware. If you look closely, I think you can see Joe Biden and his garage and that Corvette and all the classified documents just strewn around the garage. All right, we've got a lot more to get to in this segment, including former White House official talking about Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and the general election. More on that in a moment. First, Terrance Bates in Denver with the headline, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
The United Auto Workers Union strike is continuing to drag on, and the union itself is flexing its political muscle.
Our message to anyone running for public office is that we're going to make endorsements with people that are there for us, and that's shown through your actions, not through words. Our invitation to anyone today, including the White House, to come and join our workers on a picket line, that's an open invitation for anybody. We want, that's where you see support.
In an attempt to upstage President Trump, President Biden is expected to join striking UAW workers on the picket line in Michigan today. President Trump is scheduled to speak with union workers in Detroit tomorrow. There's still no word if he'll actually join UAW workers on the picket line, though. The union is reportedly saying there's been no communication with President Trump and his team. While the UAW has reportedly made progress in its negotiations with Ford, the union is still far apart in its talks with General Motors and Stellantis. And in other headlines, embattled New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez speaks out publicly for the first time since being slapped with bribery charges. He and his wife have a date with the federal judge in Manhattan tomorrow.
Those who have rushed to judgment, you have done so based on a limited set of facts framed by the prosecution to be as salacious as possible. Remember, prosecutors get it wrong sometimes. Sadly, I know that.
This is the third corruption investigation surrounding Menendez. However, he's never been convicted. The New Jersey Democrat and his wife each face 3 criminal counts for allegedly taking a luxury Mercedes-Benz, multiple kilos worth of gold bars, and piles of cash. Senator Menendez claims the nearly $500,000 cash that was found in his home was from his personal savings, not from bribes. He claims to have kept that sort of cash on hand for emergencies. The longtime senator is refusing to resign despite an increased number of Democrats calling for him to step down. And finally, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will be one of the 6 Republican presidential candidates to take the debate stage tomorrow in California. Apparently, the liberal Golden State is DeSantis' focus, as he'll reportedly debate California Governor Gavin Newsom in November. The debate will be for little more than bragging rights, as Newsom isn't even an official candidate for the Democrat nomination for president, and DeSantis is losing support rather than gaining it in his bid for the White House. The 90-minute debate will air on Fox News Channel and will be moderated by Sean Hannity. The event is being billed as a face-off between red and blue states. DeSantis blames liberal states like California for policies that encourage illegal immigration, and Newsom has called DeSantis a small, pathetic man and called for criminal and civil action against him. And really quickly here, fed up New York residents block buses of arriving migrants, landing some of the protesters in jail. Check out this video as it all unfolded. New York Mayor Eric Adams admits that his city is past its breaking point. The mayor estimates that his city will pay about $12 billion over the next 3 years for migrant crisis. Here's a breakdown of the dollars funding the nonsense here. According to Adams, quote, with more than 57,300 individuals currently in our care on average night, it amounts to $9.8 million a day, almost $300 million a month, and nearly $3.6 billion a year. That puts Sanctuary City into a new light. That's going to do it for your headlines. Now, let's get you back to David.
Terrance, appreciate it. Time now to talk about Donald Trump and those poll numbers in the general election. ABC News had that poll out, as you know, the other day, Donald Trump up by 10 points over Joe Biden. I believe we should now give smelling salts to George Stephanopoulos and the whole political team at ABC News, because they're having a conniption over there, you can be sure. This is what Donald Trump said about those numbers yesterday in South Carolina.
It's no wonder that far-left lunatics are getting desperate to stop our movement by any means necessary. As you know, Crooked Joe and the radical left thugs have weaponized law enforcement to arrest their leading opponent. Me, I'm their leading opponent. I'm their only opponent. On fake and phony charges. I went through a whole life. I never heard the word indictment. All of a sudden, every day, I'm getting indicted. In fact, I'm getting a little concerned because we had a poll this weekend that was so big. I said, here we go, more indictments. Every time we get a good poll, we get indicted.
We get indicted every time. All right. Roma Daravi is with us now, a former Deputy Director of Strategic Communications for the White House. Roma, great to see you today.
Great to be with you, David.
Let me ask you a little bit about these poll numbers. What are we to make of them, and how surprising are they?
The poll numbers are fantastic. Donald Trump has been light years ahead of the other GOP candidates that are running for office. And it's really no surprise to us, right? This is a race between President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. That's all it is. So we are focused on this number. It's a good one to see. And he's exactly right. The more his polls go up, the more investigations you'll see. And it's also no surprise. You know, I was in the White House when we saw investigation after investigation and Russian collusion after Russian collusion. And what did they find after years and years of a false narrative? No collusion. So they don't mind lying to the American people days on end. They don't mind lying to the American people, telling you that Donald Trump is guilty and Joe Biden is innocent, when you look at the facts, because Joe Biden is under investigation right now via his son, Hunter Biden. So pay close attention to that. The American people need to really watch what happens there. And I'm not saying just watch the DOJ, because I'm not sure we'll get a straight answer out of them, but watch what the Republicans are doing on the Hill.
Well, and what we know they're doing on the Hill this Thursday is they'll begin House impeachment inquiry hearings into all of this. Where do you think this goes? Do you think ultimately Republicans writ large, in other words, the entire House Republican caucus, will be able to potentially impeach Biden over this? I wonder how long this will go on, the impeachment inquiry stage, because ultimately Kevin McCarthy is going to be faced with a decision whether or not to put this on the floor.
Right. Well, whether or not it gets to that point, we're not quite there yet. What's really important right now is that we can get some of the hard facts out of these people that are going to be testifying, because like I just said, we're not going to get a straight answer out of the DOJ. They are in Biden's pocket. They are in the pocket of the Democrats and the swamp. And there is a two-tier justice system here. And we know that very well. So it's important that you pay attention to what the people talking to the House are saying. Are they sharing facts and figures? Listen to the numbers, listen to the data there, because it's going to be very telling. And I think the American people are already doing that. Quite frankly, you see it in the poll numbers, right? We just talked about that. So the American people have their eyes wide open. They know what they're getting themselves into. This is a Trump-Biden rematch, and we will win.
You know, Roma, let's talk about this debate coming up this week, the GOP presidential debate. Womp womp, you know, snooze fest. I mean, am I missing something here? I mean, I used to love going to these debates, and now it's just like, what's the point? I mean, when I say what's the point, listen, great, knock yourself out, go ahead and debate. But this is a race for second place at this point, and a far away second place. What do you make of what we're going to see this week transpire at the Reagan Presidential Library?
So I have a fairly different point of view from you, David. I actually think these debates are really important for the American people to watch, not just Republicans, but independents and Democrats as well. Why? Because you are seeing some, not all of them, but some of them will be part of President Trump's cabinet. They will be in his ear in his second administration, and they will be helping him make decisions on behalf of the American people. So I think you should tune in. I think you should pay attention to what some of them are saying, not because you're going to go vote for them for president, but because you want to know that the Republican Party is the party that you want to support. And there are some people out there that are still on the fence about that. They look at Joe Biden and they say, oh gosh, I can't possibly do that again. But maybe they're not quite there with President Donald Trump. And so I urge them to watch this. I think that maybe they'll learn a thing or two about the Republican Party that will surprise them for the better, that will make them encourage to vote for the Republican Party, not just in the presidential election, but I really do think it'll help them better understand the party as a whole and how we are the party that is fighting for the American people and their freedoms.
You make a great point, Roma Daravi. That's why we have you on. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. When we come back, Joe Biden and cognitive decline. We can talk about that all day long. How bad is it? We will speak to a doctor who has been studying this closely. He says it's worse than we even thought. That's next. We're back in a moment.
To American Sunrise. With all the talk about the new jab and hypothetically renewed mask mandates, God forbid, a medical journal took to investigating a related topic: how humans feel about canine vaccines. As you can imagine, this strikes near and dear to my heart, and it turns out more than half of U.S. dog owners are actually skeptical of canine vaccines. In fact, 53% of dog owners admit to having negative views about a jab for their pets. 37% question the safety, and 22% the efficacy. Although some vax hesitancy among dog owners isn't new, veterinarians say people's reluctance to vaccinate their pets has increased significantly since the pandemic, based on negative sentiments toward the safety and efficacy of the human jab, including personal experiences with adverse effects, with allergies, and with poor outcomes. David, 2023 reports show that almost 45% of American households have a dog. I can't believe it's that low, honestly. So if more than half of those people question the jab for their pets, then what should we expect in terms of fear of the new jab on humans?
Well, we should expect that fear will increase regarding the jab, and that's a good thing. I can't believe I actually said that fear is a good thing, but in this case, fear is a good thing when it comes to getting the jab, for sure. And look, if you look at some of the statistics, Dr. G, only 37% of Americans have trust in the FDA. Actually, it's pretty high, but 37%, that's actually relatively low. Obviously, it's not a majority. And the same thing with NIH. And so this this is where we are today in America, where people do not trust these vaccines, especially under emergency authorization. And this is translated right into our pets. And it's no surprise at all.
Based on the VAERS site, the government's own numbers, it's scary. And I think it's good to have a healthy skepticism. I don't think we even have to call it fear. It's not fear. It's evidence-based. Fear is, anxiety based on what is not rational. This is rational because there's evidence. Anyway, let's bring in the CEO of, sorry, David. Let's bring in Mr. Galoti, and we'll come back to you too, David. But Peter, welcome to the show, first of all. I have to tell you, I'm pleasantly surprised at this new skepticism, even of having dogs vaccinated, because there's just no question. Vaccines are extremely profitable. There is a profit incentive, right, to vaccinate anything especially when it's mandated. And right now, if you're going to live in certain subdivisions, you have to have your pet vaccinated. Certainly, if you're going to fly internationally, there are a lot of hotels and other places that ask for proof of vaccination if you're going to have your pet there. And so it shouldn't surprise us that when you can make mandated money by the government mandating it, there's a massive effort that way. And most people don't know, most veterinarians have become corporatized. They're all corporate owned now. Very few little mom and pop veterinarians out there anymore. So you can bet that these corporations are going to work hand in hand with the pharmaceutical companies that supply these vaccines and with government, just exactly like we've seen with people. Does this surprise you, Peter?
Sadly, no, Dr. G and David. And I think you guys were absolutely right by saying the only thing that people should trust nowadays is their instincts.
Yes.
You pointed out the VAERS system. Keep in mind, the VAERS system was actually shut down for the COVID-19 vaccine at the end of June. That's how bad the data was. The government shut it down with no warning, even though there were 10 million reported adverse events in that system, and 10% of those 10 million events resulted in hospitalization or a severe case. So it's no surprise that they suppressed this data. And when you're also telling the public that there are no effective medications for a disease in order to give the pharmaceutical companies a monopoly, the profit is obvious.
Yeah, and then we go into the natural remedies. I mean, people are looking for alternatives. Alternative medicines, of course, been around for ages, but it seems to me we're seeing more, not just of a spike, but a trend going in that direction now because of a lack of trust in our government institutions.
If there's one silver lining from COVID, David, it's that people really have decided to start taking their health into their own hands.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing at the Wellness Company. We're really trying to promote preventative care. We offer a full line of supplements, including spike support, which I know you guys have highlighted on your show before, which offers people a way to actually detox from the vaccine and from the spike protein, which lingers on after a COVID infection. And we've had tremendous results with that, as well as our other products. And we're really proud that we've helped so many people in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it really is amazing what we can do with things that are, in a lot of cases, more natural. But what's the reason, Peter, drill down for us, why our own government isn't offering? I know in India, they offered COVID kits that include hydroxychloroquine and included ivermectin and a Z-Pack and zinc, I believe. We didn't do that here in India, that much more impoverished, much more closed-in, populous country, right? They didn't have the COVID numbers we had, not even close. So explain why it is that the government is so opposed to just using some of these things that really work, but perhaps don't benefit the pharmaceutical companies quite as profitably as maybe they wish they would.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've all discovered that a healthcare system that was supposed to be working in our best interest has just not been. And that's really been due to the fact that the pharmaceutical industries and the lobbies on Capitol Hill have been able to take the government captive here by declaring that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and all these other drugs, some of which have won Nobel Prizes for their efficacy, are not effective for COVID. They're allowed to get the emergency authorization, allowed to bypass all the rigorous safety tests that you would expect from any drug, and push a experimental gene therapy onto the population, one that made every single doctor and pharmaceutical company that produced them richer behind their wildest dreams. I think the net profit for Pfizer was something like $200 billion in 2022. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
So I think it's pretty obvious why the government was standing behind the pharmaceutical industries in this one. It's campaign season.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. All right. Well, we tell everybody every day, go get the emergency kit. Go to twc.health/voice today. Do it today so you don't have to look back and regret it when the government decides to be heavy-handed again. That's twc.health/voice. Use the promo code VOICE. That'll save you 10% and a small price to pay for peace of mind. Dr. Peter Gillooly, thank you so much for being here. Come back soon.
Thank you.
All right, it's clear that Joe Biden is suffering severe cognitive decline. Here's a moment yesterday when he spoke at the White House.
So today I'm pleased to announce we're working with Congress to invest $40 billion in our Pacific Islands Infrastructure Initiative. We call it the PI anyways. It doesn't matter what we call it, but that's what it is. I was going to get back to acronyms, and I'm going to stand not doing that.
And Dr. Frank Contessessa is an internist, and he joins us now. Doctor, we all know Joe's going downhill fast, but how fast?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
We're all kind of watching this in real time, and it doesn't take a lot to go back even just a couple of years, even just to the last election, and we can see a major difference in Joe Biden. And, it's not the exception. They try to explain that, he just had a mishap, he had a slip up. It's a pattern now. Now it's if he gets through a speech, it's the exception. But, there's an aspect to this that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. And, of course, disclaimer, I've never examined the president. I don't have any deeper knowledge of his medical history than anybody else. I'm just observing. But, in 1988, Joe Biden had 2 aneurysms repaired. He had 2 separate open brain surgeries to repair leaking blood vessels. And he had a bleed into his brain. It's called a subarachnoid hemorrhage. And when that happens and you expose the brain to air, it's really never the same. And what you see now, there's actually a syndrome called post-subarachnoid hemorrhage syndrome. And it's not just the cognitive problems and the memory lapses, but it's lapses in judgment. It's a social inappropriateness, the sniffing of the hair that we've seen and the sort of the Creepy Joe episodes that we've seen. It's more to it than that. It's happening more now, and I think it's accelerated because of his age. But some of this stuff is observable, even over the past couple of years, probably linking back to those brain surgeries that he had, decades ago.
Yeah, and we see these pharmaceutical ads on television sometimes that are talking about, if your person, your loved one with Alzheimer's has these angry outbursts, here's a drug you can take, which God only knows if it works because God only knows what drugs work today. But anyway, we do see that Joe Biden seems to have angry outbursts. Sometimes when he's just talking to himself, right, in a speech or something, he's trying to give a speech and he'll just all of a sudden get angry inappropriately, like almost angry at his own words. Is that a sign?
It is. If you look at this subarachnoid hemorrhage, post-subarachnoid hemorrhage syndrome, that's kind of one of the things. And it's a whole constellation of symptoms, but that is one of them. It's the lack of judgment, even speaking to the victims in Hawaii, telling about his little kitchen fire and almost losing his Corvette and his cat, when these people just had their entire lives incinerated. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to know that that's not what you say to people who just lost everything. And this guy's been in politics for 40 years. So he should know better that that's not what you say. And maybe the reason that he doesn't is because he's suffering from this particular syndrome.
Yeah, and another thing that I've observed, I'm a student of human behavior and body language. That's my background in psychology. And my son, Samuel, I have a son who has Down syndrome. And I have to constantly remind him, heel, 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 when he's walking, because he'll forget to walk on his heels. He shuffles on his toes. And it's a sign of a cognitive impairment. The child, my little boy has Down syndrome. So I have to constantly remind him. And I find myself, when I watch Joe Biden walking, wanting to say, heel, 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 because it just doesn't look cognitively on the ball, right? To be shuffling and walking on your toes like that. Is that another symptom?
It is. So, and this goes towards the dementia component. People with Alzheimer's, people with dementia, there's a couple of physical attributes that you see. It's the gait, it's the gaze. Sometimes he gets that squinty look. He's forgetful. He's not sure where to go. He's do I go over here? Do I go over there? He's shaking hands with people who aren't there. And this is all part and parcel of this particular group of symptoms, yes.
Yeah, and just about 30 seconds remaining, but I really want to get your reaction. Does it seem like this is speeding up for him? Because it seems to me like it was bad when he started, but it's like getting worse by the week.
I think it is speeding up. And, part of that is people who are going through these cognitive issues, the word they like routine. They do best in routines where you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again with similar surroundings and in a comfort zone. The president of the United States, that's not the lifestyle that they live. They're traveling. They're supposed to be having intense meetings, and it's probably the most intense job on the planet. And it's probably not the best place for somebody who's going through this. And
it'd be nice if somebody loved him enough to actually take care of him rather than to exploit him like the puppet that he's become. Anyway, Dr. Frank Contessessa, we thank you so much for being here. Coming up, our Stay Awake, Not Woke segment. Don't go anywhere because we're coming right back at you.
Coming up on 10 minutes to the top of the hour, which means it's time to stay awake, not woke. It's sponsored by Beard Vet Coffee. BeardVet.com is the website. Use the promo code RAV for 10% off. And get this, for every bag of coffee sold, Beard Vet Coffee donates a portion to help veterans with housing, food, and other needs. BeardVet.com is the website. Use the promo code RAV for 10% off. All right, let's check in with Dr. G now. She is awake but not woke, but you do have a woke story for us this morning. Hey, Dr. G.
Good transition, Terrance. All right, wokeness in the workplace has taken on a life of its own. It's now reshaping long-respected professions and the education required for them. The New York Bar wants to mandate racial bias training for judges. Court staff and jurors would also be required to receive this woke training. It recommends the update for law schools, private employers, and the court system as a way to advance diversity. And all this is being pushed now that the Supreme Court struck down, remember, affirmative action in higher ed. So meanwhile, though, a leaked Veterans Affairs training video sparked some outrage after it was leaked on X. Take a look at this post. The training video instructs staff to confirm that men can get pregnant and advises not to congratulate a pregnant woman. and encourages and glorifies abortions. This is not an exaggeration. Check out the video.
Series on the mental health aspects of abortion. This is part of VA's overall training series on reproductive health. Person who is pregnant is more inclusive language. However, many of the studies that exist to date have not so far included trans men or non-gender binary people identified as such.
There are many ways the VA can provide abortions, including on-site with providers, ordering prescription medications, or performing abortion procedures in outpatient clinics and operating rooms where available.
In the immediate aftermath of seeking an abortion, those who were denied abortion compared to those who received it felt a lot more negative emotions, more regret, anxiety, and anger in particular.
David, if men can get pregnant, which of course they can't, there's never in the history of the world been a pregnant man, nor will there ever be. But if we're just going to go with this whole hallucination and this whole religion of trans, because that's what it is a religion, then why aren't they advocating for men to be able to get abortions?
Well, exactly. I mean, where does it end? This is so ridiculous. The only time I feel pregnant is after a few Mexican meals in a row.
Here we go.
But that's about it. Sorry, you knew that was coming. I couldn't help get a dietary.
I'm going to walk off today. Okay, Terrance has taught me, and I'm going to walk off.
Today, American Sunrise will be co-hosted by myself and my ego. That's about it.
And yourself.
And myself, yeah, pretty much. Hey, but here's the deal. I mean, this gets us ready for wartime, really? I mean, it's all about wartime readiness. This has nothing to do with any of that. And the recruiting, it shows. I mean, 25% regarding the Army, they're down 25% in terms of recruitment. They couldn't meet the goal, and it just goes on. So, Terrance, I mean, we're talking about national security. We're talking about our own peace and prosperity here.
And what just doesn't make sense, the thing that struck me in the video, you can't congratulate a real woman for being pregnant.
Right.
Really?
Oh, my
What
goodness,
is that?
yes.
Right.
Right.
I'm glad. I was like, maybe I'm the only person that caught this. But you can't congratulate a real woman for being pregnant? How ridiculous is that? It's all ridiculous. But at this point, it's almost disrespectful to just regular common sense Americans.
Yeah, and you really wonder where the feminists are out there. I mean, this is degrading to everything that is distinctly womanhood, and yet they are crickets on the whole thing. It's disappointing. Anyway, all right, guys, coming up is woke Jesus destroying Christianity from within. We're going to tell you that's up next, so don't go anywhere.
That is my jam, that music. Indianapolis, Indiana. Did I just say my jam? That's my nightclubbing music. All right, welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. Democrats and faith. That is what we're going to talk about in today's moment of faith. It's not looking good for Democrats. I want to have you look at this headline here. Democrats calling themselves religious has plummeted. Look at this. Religious identification among Democrats crashes 20 points in 20 years. It was 60% or something like that in 1999. Today, it's about 37%. Let's bring in Pastor Lucas Miles, the author of the great, wonderful, gotta get it book, Woke Jesus. Pastor Lucas Miles, great to see you, sir. It's been a while. Hey, let me ask you first about the Democrats and get to your book real quick. But the Democrats, what has happened? What has gone on with this party? Pastor?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, we think back to the Obama years. They made a big point that they were going to take God out of the party platform because he wasn't inclusive enough in order to list God's name. And so they kind of drove that away. But then you started seeing them pull back religious language into some of their justifications for their various policies. I mean, we have the Pete Buttigieg's of the world. We have the AOCs and other figures that have referenced Jesus as sort of the reason for open borders and the reason why, democratic socialism is a better option or things like this. And so there's kind of this dichotomy where we're seeing the Democrats, as a whole seem to be drifting away from the faith, but they know that the rhetoric is important to convince people of the effectiveness and the righteousness of their various policies. And so they keep using the name of Jesus as propaganda for this. It's a very weird time. We're also seeing, of course, this uptick in wokeism and woke churches. So I'll be curious to see what this number does in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into the book you wrote about woke Jesus, because this is what the Democrats are essentially doing. They're trying to figure out a way to kind of fuse this fake idea of a woke Jesus and religiosity into their narrative here.
Yes. Look, if everything is spiritual, then nothing is spiritual. And that's kind of the direction that they're going. There is no longer kind of this distinction of the lordship of Jesus. He's just a great example for us that we are all walking in the incarnation, as we live out these principles of being the hands and feet in Jesus to illegal immigrants and, universal health care, sort of initiatives. And this is really, it's obviously a departure from true Orthodox Christianity. I think that there's probably individuals where they have the right intentions, but the wrong methodology to get there. And it ends up really creating more and more injustice, as a result of these failed and bankrupt policies.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, we should point out, this is a best-selling book. You got to go get it. Woke Jesus. It is a great deep dive. There it is again. Pastor Lucas Miles, we really appreciate you being here today on American Sunrise. Appreciate it. All right. Well, when we come back, we have more on this second hour. Keep it right here. I can't wait to see who's next. I don't know what's happening. Back in a moment.
up in the second hour of American Sunrise. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna here to talk about impeachment and a potential government shutdown. Could the GOP turn those two into big wins? We will ask her.
And President Trump's former EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, joins us to discuss his former boss's upcoming visit with union workers. His take on what could happen. It actually may surprise you.
And shocking new details about the JFK assassination that will change everything you thought you knew about the events of that day. All of that and more on this second hour of American Sunrise.
We've got your back as you start your day.
Articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
We watch every morning while getting ready for work.
All right, good morning. I'm Dr. Gina, live from West Palm Beach, right here where the sun shines. But we have David Brody out in Washington, D.C., where you're getting ready to probably see a pretty fall.
Yeah, for sure. And I tell you what, the first hour was great. Second hour is going to be even better. And let's just do a third and a fourth hour. Why the heck not?
Right. Hey, Zen, can we get a third and fourth? The producers are like, no.
No. Well, listen, I said a third and fourth hour. I didn't say I'd be a part of it. It would be just you and Terrance. I've got to run. Here's
just
Terrance
volunteering
Bates.
us. Got it.
That's right. Terrance in Denver with the headlines for the next 7.5 hours. Terrance, take it away.
Yeah, I don't have enough hours in the day to get it done for these 2 hours, much less 4 or 5. Jeesh. A busy week of campaigning is already underway for President Trump. He kicked it off on Monday afternoon with a rally in South Carolina, which of course hosts the first in the South primary.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office shortly after I win the presidency, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It's going to be settled. I know them both. It's going to be settled quickly.
After taking some thunder away from presidential primary opponent Senator Tim Scott and former Governor Nikki Haley in their own backyards rather than on stage at the GOP debate tomorrow, Mr. Trump will instead follow up Monday's rally with a speech before union members in Michigan. He'll then visit California on Friday to speak at the state's GOP convention. It will be an encore to the GOP primary debate tomorrow that he's skipping 2 days before. Then on Sunday, the former president will travel to Iowa for a Commit to Caucus event where he'll deliver policy remarks focused on agriculture. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says Republican lawmakers on the committee have uncovered an overwhelming amount of evidence that President Biden abused his public office during his tenure as vice president in the Obama administration. During the first impeachment inquiry hearing on Thursday, forensic accountant Bruce Dubinsky, along with former Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice Tax Division Eileen Connor and legal scholar Professor Jonathan Turley will testify. That hearing will reportedly aim to establish what the president knew and his role in the foreign business dealings of his son Hunter. Comer says, and I'm quoting here, "This week, the House Oversight Committee will present evidence uncovered to date and hear from legal and financial experts about crimes the Bidens may have committed as they brought in millions at the expense of U.S. interests." And now to an update on the investigation into the fentanyl death of a 1-year-old at a New York daycare. On Monday, NYPD announced charges against a third person in that case. The latest suspect is charged with narcotics distribution after kilos worth of fentanyl and other drugs were found at that daycare where the infant died. 4 other children also tested positive for exposure to opioids. Federal prosecutors say the latest guy charged in the case played an instrumental role in selling large quantities of fentanyl and other drugs that were stored at the daycare. The daycare owner and a second person were arrested last week. Detectives are still on the hunt for the alleged ringleader of this drug operation. And David and Gina, as we get back to you, just in Hunter Biden apparently filing suit now against Rudy Giuliani over the infamous laptop. This lawsuit apparently has to do with privacy rights that he says were illegally disseminated content from Biden's infamous laptop. Also going on to say in this criminal complaint, which by the way was filed in California, that Giuliani is, quote, primarily responsible for the total annihilation of Biden's digital privacy. So Hunter Biden is now suing Rudy Giuliani over disseminating information allegedly related to that infamous laptop, which we know had lots of stuff on it.
I'll tell you what, lawyers are making a lot of money these days. Anyway, thank you so much, Terrance.
Yeah.
David, we are told that the sky will fall if the U.S. government shuts down, and if Congress is unable to act, there will be a government shutdown at the end of this month. The corporate media and the Democrats in Washington, D.C. say that the impending doom is the fault of Republicans. But here are some facts about government shutdowns that the corporate media doesn't want you to know. There have been 20 government shutdowns since 1976. 20. We didn't die. The world didn't end. They happen every 2 to 3 years, in fact. The longest ever was 34 days long, and everybody lived and was just fine. The average length of a government shutdown is 8 days. Social Security checks are issued, even though the left likes to lie about that one. And all government workers receive full back pay, even though the non-essential workers get to actually have a little vacation. They get to stay home.
Right.
David, none of that sounds so scary to me. Listen, I think the best thing that could happen, honestly, is that departments like the DOJ and Department of Education and a few others just shut down for a while. And I think it'd be great to save some taxpayer money and see what that feels like.
Yeah, for sure. Gina, let's get more on this right now with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna from Florida. Congresswoman, thanks for being here. And before we even get going, congratulations on your new little one, your new little baby born into the world. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. He's definitely running the show now.
That's right. You're operating on 27 minutes of sleep. I get it. I understand.
We all remember.
All right. Let me ask you a little bit about this shutdown. Where are you on this? I mean, McCarthy can't even get a CR to the table. What do you think's going to happen? He's in a pickle, as my dad likes to say.
I'm fully backing the position that many of my conservative hardliners have, and I've been very vocal on that. You know, the government should not be operating under CRs as they have been since the 90s. Representative Gates so eloquently pointed that out. And the fact is that back in January, when we negotiated the terms for the speaker's agreement, we actually had a promise from Speaker McCarthy to bring forward those single subject bills. And that's really how Congress should operate. So I think that there's actually headway. I've heard that there's the 4 bills, one of them being DOD, that will receive funding. And it seems like there's negotiations that are in play. But this is part of the job. It's always ironic to me when, you know, the nation is like, well, mainly corporate media is like, oh, you know, Congress they might shut down and God forbid we have conversations. That's what we're supposed to do. And frankly, I'm just glad that my colleagues are standing with us so that we can really fight for the American people.
Congresswoman, my husband, a former senator from Missouri, sent me this text yesterday, and it said, on the government shutdown in McCarthy, why aren't they going straight to the American people with a budget and the top 10 priorities they put in it? Restore, remain in Mexico, secure the border, find deportation flights, not importation flights, strong naval defense, fund IRS tax return processing, and the list goes on. There are really good things in bills they're putting out, but aren't going public with these things. Can you explain this?
Well, right now on this CR, the reason why we're fighting for those single subjects is because usually in a CR, it's just an up and down block vote, and we don't want that. But frankly, I agree with your husband, and that's exactly why we're fighting so hard for these single subject bills. The fact is that a lot of what we put out that goes to Senate actually gets shot down. And so they're called messaging bills, but because we don't control the Senate, there's only so much that we can do. So this is really an opportunity that we have as Congress to kind of rein in that out of control woke government, but also the Biden inflation that we're seeing and really help to kind of reset the economy. And so that's why it's so incredibly important that the messaging is strong on this. So if you are watching this, just make sure that you are making your voice heard, especially on social media and where you stand on this position.
Yeah.
Congresswoman, we want to get to your new book in just a moment. Let me ask you about this House impeachment inquiry. It starts Thursday. Where do you think this is going ultimately? And I don't mean the inquiry. I mean a potential House impeachment vote against Joe Biden. Do you see that materializing here?
I think that if we continue to push for it, as I have been for the last few months, based on the evidence that I've seen as a member of House Oversight, I think that we'll get there. And frankly, based on the evidence that we're seeing, I can tell you that if it were me, if it were any other Republican president or Republican as a whole that did this, we'd be in jail.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, the second GOP presidential primary, of course, is coming right up, and a debate, primary debate. President Trump is skipping it. Is it time for these candidates to exit stage right, though, and just get behind Donald Trump?
I've been saying that for a while. You know, President Trump is leading by incredible margins. If you are a candidate for office, I mean, you want to have this polling. In some places, upwards 30-40%. He's crushing it. And so I think the whole distraction right now really takes away from the fact that President Trump is a nominee. He's going to be going up against Joe Biden, pending that they don't switch Joe Biden out for Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama. But frankly, he's the best candidate that we have. He's an incredible foreign policy leader, and that's exactly what we need right now.
Absolutely.
Congresswoman, let me ask you real quick about your book. I say real quick, take your time here. The Legend of Naranja. It's out now in bookstores and really all across the country. Just fascinating in terms of what you've done here with this. And tell us a little bit more, because our audience would definitely love to, quote, get a copy.
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting that you bring this up. Only a few days ago, Newsweek actually tried to cancel our book because it talks about a banana. You guys can assume who that might be, that essentially cheats in a race, and basically how naranja, the orange, which I'm assuming you guys know exactly who that is, does the right thing and is really fighting for the people of Fruitland. So the article came out. Newsweek was basically trying to basically say that we are pushing the great lie to children and that voter fraud didn't exist, even though we know here in the state of Florida, actually set up a division of election integrity and people actually ended up getting arrested. So the fact is that, you know, even in children's books, they're basically trying to cancel our book. It feels like for Newsweek article based on the podcast that they saw, and then to really hit it before it even hits the shelves this October. You can get a pre-sale copy at orangemanbook.com. But I mean, the fact is that it does seem like they're trying to cancel it, mainly because of the fact that one, we're conservative, and two, it's a kid's book. So it was very interesting, but I'll give you guys really a sneak peek here. When my husband and I actually came up with this, it was on a flight together, but you guys can see here just kind of on the illustrations exactly who that is. Hold on, let me pull it back so you guys can see. Oh no, it's going out of focus.
Well, we'll just have to get our own copy, Congresswoman. We'll just have to get our own copy. Exactly. We're excited about that. And congratulations, new baby, new book. You haven't even been in Congress that long, but you are tearing it up out there. And I'm so proud because I definitely was friends with you and knew you win. So very proud of you and all of your accomplishments. And I just want to thank you with a really full heart for being out there fighting for the Patriot Warriors of America and standing firm like you have. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. All right, coming up, whatever you thought you knew about the JFK assassination, forget it. Gerald Posner is coming up to tell us what he has found in new information about that fateful day. And also later, Trump's former EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, will join us to talk about Trump and Biden's visit to the UAW picket line. And Mr. Pruitt says he can convince us that the unions are right to strike. Don't miss that and so much more as American Sunrise continues.
that's Terrance Bates whistling in the background. Drain the Swamp, by the way, sponsored by Sea of Mud. There it is, seaofmud.com. Use promo code RAV1776 for 15% off. They are a rural American patriotic apparel company, American made. That's right, Joe. And they have much more than shirts. They've got knives, drinkware, swimwear, jewelry. I'm good on the jewelry, but, that's just me. Seaofmud.com. Use promo code RAV1776 for 15% off. I'm always looking for a deal. Dr. G, I don't know about you, and I'll take a deal any day of the week. What do we got in the swamp story today, even though I'm in the swamp, but you've got the story?
All right, David, it goes a little something like this. At a time when the judicial branch is under heightened scrutiny over ethics, we're finding out lower court judges may be hiding more than the worst seeds of the highest court. Financial disclosure reports are required from all members of the federal judiciary by May 15th, that is. And the law also requires them to be made available online for Americans to view by mid-August. This is called transparency. But by the end of last month, all 9 Supreme Court justices' financial reports were posted online, revealing private jet flights, foreign travel, and even a bouquet of flowers that Oprah Winfrey had sent as a gift. But at least those questionably dirty reports were submitted. So according to a watchdog group that fights for transparency in the judiciary, only 17% of the judiciary members' reports are online, which means reports from many lower court judges are just missing. So what are they hiding, you might ask? What will we find out by November? The deadline for those who filed a maximum 3-month extension. And who will be in the hot seat, right, for failing to submit the disclosures completely? Terrance, is this just part of a pattern of corruption we're seeing on basically every level of government and especially the judiciary today?
I'm not going to necessarily say it's a pattern of corruption, but it's definitely a pattern of some of these judges not being as transparent as, again, law prescribes and as many American people deserve. We want to see where your money is coming from. We want to see who potentially is influencing you, particularly since you're making such huge decisions on the bench. And so I think these judges need to have this information in these disclosures in ASAP. And even in my mind, a 3-month extension is way too long. It's 3 months too long in my mind, David.
And right, for sure. And just real quick, the Wall Street Journal did an investigative study into this. 130 lower court cases were decided regarding, they had family members that owned stock in the companies that were decided by those cases. And so this is clearly a big problem.
All right, guys. Well, no doubt it is a big problem. The American people, I don't think, are going to stand for stuff like this anymore. At least not the American people I know. Coming up next, JFK's assassination details. These were revealed by an elderly Secret Service agent who was guarding JFK that day. And we're going to tell you all about it. So stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
to American Sunrise, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Baseball season, by the way, over here in Denver, Colorado, but football season is underway, even though they got blown out the other day, but that's a whole nother story. Credit card companies are losing money at the fastest pace in almost 30 years outside of the great financial crisis of 2008. Goldman Sachs reports that credit card losses at 3.63% right now, which is up 1.5% from the bottom in September of 2021. Making matters worse, Goldman analysts believe this is only the beginning and that losses will peak at nearly 5% late next year or in early 2025. The losses are largely blamed on delinquencies from people not paying their credit card bills. All of this comes as American credit card debt is at a record high, with borrowers owing more than $1 trillion on those cards. Analysts believe Capital One Financial and Discover Financial Services will be most significantly affected by these losses. David, let's get it over to you. I hope you don't have any credit card debt, my friend, but you're a very good American, so I'm sure if you do, you've already paid it off or you're paying on it.
Well, hold on. I need to take this call from my credit card company. We may have a few issues, but that's for another topic on American Sunrise, Terrance. Thank you so much for pointing that out to all of America. All right. The JFK assassination. Well, we've been talking about this for, since 1963. What actually happened that day? Some new revelations from a former Secret Service agent making and raising, I should say, a lot more questions about this. So let's bring in Gerald Posner, who wrote the book Case Closed. It was a bestseller. It is a bestseller, darn it. And Gerald Posner is with us now. Gerald, thanks for being here. Tell us about what you make of some of these new allegations from this former Secret Service agent who now, at 90 years old, came forward just recently to say, wait a minute, I found a bullet there in the car and put it on the former president's stretcher there, the gurney. This seems to potentially change everything, or does it change nothing at all?
Yeah, well, David, you asked the right question. Does it change everything or nothing at all? And yeah, like you said in the lead-in, here we are 60 years later. Just when you think there can be no more surprises on the JFK assassination, you get this 88-year-old ex-Secret Service agent who says, oh, by the way, even though I gave these real detailed statements right after the assassination about what happened, I found, Jackie Kennedy's lighter and I found her sunglasses and I saw a fragment of a bullet. Now my memory's gotten better. And I remember I found actually a whole bullet in the car. And so we're often running again on trying to figure out, what's happened? What does it mean? Some people say it means the so-called single bullet that wounded the president and Governor Connolly couldn't be real. I think maybe he's told us how it ended up on a stretcher at Parkland Hospital. But the shame of this is that even if he's right, that he didn't say this 60 years ago, when it could have been investigated by the FBI, followed up, people were alive, we would have known what happened. Now, we'll never know. I mean, just imagine if there was an assassination, when President Trump was in office, or of President Biden, and a Secret Service agent found a whole bullet, they said, at the scene where the president was shot. And then they put it in their pocket. That's what he says he did. And then they later just dropped it on a stretcher at the hospital where the president was being treated and they were trying to save his life, and then told us about it decades later. We'd be infuriated at that dereliction of duty.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because, he's saying here in this interview, and he's going to release a book about it and all that he was in shock. And he didn't quite know. How do you forget this? How do you forget this element? Am I missing? Help me out, Gerald. Am I missing something here?
You are hitting the nail on the head. And the key is on this. He says, well, I wasn't interviewed by the Warren Commission. There were 21 Secret Service agents in Dallas. 12 of them were along on the car, on the motorcade route. Only 5 were interviewed by the Warren Commission eventually, but they all gave detailed statements. He gave a statement 4 days after the assassination. He gave a statement 7 days after the assassination. And Dave, let me tell you, they are detailed. He's recalling every little bit of what he saw in the car, what he took out, how he stood next to Mrs. Kennedy, how he was outside the trauma room. And what he doesn't mention is what is the single most important thing that he found, which is, of course, the bullet. And it is hard to imagine. So let's assume for a second that for whatever reason he found the bullet, he's telling the truth, and he felt as though he had done the wrong thing by putting it on a stretcher. I get that. And then he was quiet about it, and then he kept it a secret for 60 years. And now how does he decide to disclose it? Instead of going to the FBI or coming in and talking to a reporter like you, he puts it into a book and sells it. So, it just raises a lot of questions about the accuracy of recall being better 60 years later.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're suggesting this is all for profit, potentially.
I think that, put it this way, I think he's sincere. I haven't spoken to him, but the people I've talked to who have spoken to him say he's sincere. But we know this about memory. If you have what the memory experts call a flashbulb event, that's like 9/11, the Challenger discovery, the Kennedy assassination, for those of us who are old enough to remember that assassination, the memories of that event are sort of like a flashbulb. They go off in your brain and you remember details around it. Then over time, you talk to other people, you see documentaries, you read books, you hear other witnesses, and their recollections become part of your memory. You could take a lie detector test and pass it, believing that those memories were real. They've done studies on this. And so I think he's sincere in what he's saying. And he found a publisher that has played up some of what I call the conspiracy aspects of it, because they know that sells much better than just going ahead and saying, by the way, I found a bullet, and I think that it's no big news after all. It's the same as the bullet that the Warren Commission was looking for. So I think that the people around him want it to be a little bit juicier, a little bit spicier than it might really be.
Running quick on time here, but what do you say to the folks that obviously don't trust the government, think there are multiple shooters, or more than one shooter involved? What's your answer to them? I know you have that book, Case Closed, but what's your answer, kind of in short, to them, people that don't trust the government?
I think people who don't trust the government are smart not to trust the government. But on the Kennedy assassination, it still might be Oswald who did it alone. That's not to say the government didn't screw up. The government didn't have a cover-up. The CIA lied about their efforts to kill Castro. The FBI was worried about their contacts to Oswald. Yeah. So there's all types of shenanigans. Government not to be trusted. But that doesn't mean that Oswald didn't pull off the assassination back in 1963.
Gerald Posner, great to have you on the show. Really appreciate it. Time now for the opening bell, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Well, the markets are open. You hear the bell ringing there. Starting off on a red note, it was a little bit of green just a couple of minutes ago, and now things have changed pretty significantly. The down about a half a point. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ also down fairly significantly to start this morning trading. We, of course, will continue to monitor it for you throughout the day. In the meantime, expect one more interest rate hike before the end of this year. That is the word this morning from Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank President Neil Kashkari. Speaking at the Wharton School of Business on Monday, Kashkari saying, and I'm quoting here, if the economy is fundamentally much stronger than we realized on the margin, that would tell me rates probably have to go a little bit higher and then be held higher for longer in order to cool things off. He also believes the rates need to go up another quarter of a point. Kashkari isn't alone in that thinking. Most Fed policymakers believe that there needs to be at least one more interest rate hike this year. During its meeting last week, the central bank decided to leave rates flat. You probably remember that. Well, Vladimir Putin called the U.S. dollar's drop in dominance, quote, objective and irreversible. He had that to say during the recent BRICS summit in South Africa as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa formally agreed to use local currencies instead of the U.S. dollar. As demand for the dollar weakens, the buying power of the dollar also is weakening, and that's why the Birch Gold Group is busier than ever these days. Investors and savers are looking to harness the power of physical gold that's held in a tax-sheltered IRA. You can do so as well. You can get information about that simply by texting the word America to the number 989898 and getting your free information kit on gold. With thousands of satisfied customers, an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and countless 5-star reviews, you can count on the Birch Gold Group to help you navigate transitioning an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. As the U.S. dollar continues to receive pressure from foreign countries, digital currency, and central banks themselves, you may want to arm yourself with information on how to protect your savings, and you can do so by texting the word America to the number 989898 and claiming your free information kit. You can do so right now. Well, coming up, 2024 is getting saucy. You definitely don't want to miss it. That's next, right here on American Sunrise.
It's Southern at its finest. It's red, white, and blue. You gotta get out and try it. Red State Barbecue. Red State Barbecue.
You know, every day when Colin marches in here with all the barbecue sauces to set them over there so you can see them from Red State Barbecue, I get so excited because I think we're going to do a barbecue, but then we don't. But we'll have to someday and invite all of you. The Saucy Story today is sponsored, of course, by Red State Barbecue, redstatebarbecue.com. That's redstatebbq.com. You can use your promo code RAV10 for 10% off. Love the brand new apple bourbon. Memphis Sweet Texas Spicy is actually my favorite, but the Alabama Show Horse is great on sub sandwiches. And so you can find lots of uses for them, and you need to try all of them. redstatebbq.com, promo code RAV10 for your 10% off. All right. I am dropping out of the Getter chat like crazy, and other people said they're having that same problem since the update. So I hope they work on that. But anyway, our saucy story today, one by one, blue states are helping President Trump back into the White House. Trump notches another delegate selection rule win in Massachusetts this time. The Super Tuesday state's Republican Party voted unanimously to pass a primary delegate plan that keeps a winner-takes-all threshold, which is most likely to benefit Donald Trump. Now, over in California, Republicans there also voted recently to award all of the state's delegates to the candidate who secures more than half of the statewide vote. So now GOP donors are grappling with Trump's staying power as the second Republican presidential debate looms right ahead of us. One major donor said, quote, "Every Republican's dilemma right now is, do we try and undermine and destroy Trump only to have it come back and haunt us because he's the candidate and it's Trump or Biden?" David, do you think we'll start to see more GOP candidates drop out after the debate on Wednesday? I've been screaming for this. I interviewed Kimberly Guilfoyle last week, and she said the same thing. The best thing they can do if they want to be politically viable ever again is get out of the way, unite with us, because we're at war.
No, you're absolutely right. But I think you're going to scream more, because I don't think any of them are getting out after Wednesday. Or when is it? Is it Wednesday night, the debate? Anyhow, is it Wednesday or Thursday?
I'm not sure, because I'm so excited about it.
Wednesday,
It's tomorrow,
Wednesday.
yeah.
Anyhow, I don't know. It all runs together at this point. No, none of them are going to get out. And look, Asa Hutchinson, memo, out, please. Governor Christie, please, out. Doug Burgum, knock yourself out. Don't play basketball. Please leave. Because, listen, none of them are going to be the nominee. But you mentioned about being politically viable in the future. Well, none of them are going to be politically viable in the future. They're all kind of on the way out anyhow. So what do they care? I will say this, that Scott Walker and I'm trying to think of the other. Oh, Rick Perry, Scott Walker and Rick Perry. They did drop out, but they didn't drop out until like the third or fourth debate back in 2016. So that would have been about October or November.
Yeah,
so
but they weren't running against Trump. I mean, nobody had the kind of. I mean, right. Well, I guess they were actually, but they didn't. Nobody had the kind of numbers. Trump has changed everything, David.
Yeah, no, that's true. But the point is, on your timeline, I don't think they'll get out until probably mid-November. And then I think you'll see a couple get out. That's the way I see it.
And if someone like DeSantis gets out, do you think that MAGA will forgive him and that he's viable ever for president again?
That's going to be a tough one. I mean, he's going to have to reinvent himself a little bit, honestly. Yeah. And here's the problem. And I don't mean to say this in a mean way, but I guess it's going to come across as mean. But he still has his personality, and that's not great. I mean, how do you reinvent your DNA?
I don't know, because Florida loved him, and he was the same guy. It was just kind of until he came in to run against Donald Trump, and then kind of things went downhill for them. But President Trump, David, as you know, won't even be at the debate. He'll be in Detroit, meeting with American workers who are on strike. President Trump's former EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, says the union workers are doing the right thing and should stand up to the auto manufacturers' CEOs. And Scott Pruitt joins us now. Scott, this is interesting to me, because I don't trust the union vote for GOP. I've seen a lot of Republicans in my lifetime conform and try to kowtow and try to reach out to these union workers, and it never seems to ultimately benefit them. There'll be a lot of talk and then not a lot of action later. But has Trump changed that?
I think clearly, during our administration, during President Trump's first term, that was changed in many states. But Gina, I would say to you at the outset, this is really, let's set aside the politics for just a second and the consequences of supporting or not supporting the effort with the UAW, and just ask what's right presently. Because when the head of Ford came out after the UAW started the strike and said in the Wall Street Journal that if the union gets all that they want, that means we're going to concentrate on sport utility vehicles that generate the most profit. I mean, these companies have effectively become alter egos of government. They use government regulation to manipulate market share. If they fail, they get bailed out. They use tax subsidies to attract customers. I mean, this is not, in my view, when you look at auto manufacturers in this country, this is not Henry Ford's manufacturing companies. These aren't for-profit companies that are out there in the marketplace, risking capital, making decisions on what's best to maximize profit. They are an alter ego of government. And so why should these CEOs, reaping all the benefits from government interaction, government benefits, and government subsidies, why should they get paid so much and UAW workers get paid so little? So it's just a choice that manufacturers have made, using CAFE standards and others to manipulate the market for their benefit.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, though. I believe that what they're asking for is about $400,000 a year and to work $300,000 a year to work 4 days a week. A lot of people out there will say, boy, that's a lot of money. I'd love to make that much money. So when we talk about it being fair wages, are we really talking about fair wages? Are we really talking about pretty prime wages?
Yeah, the specifics of the negotiation matter, Gina, to your point. But I think when you hear the CEO of a manufacturing company say, well, if they get all that they want, we're going to actually start focusing on profit. I mean, when they say that at the outset, that sends a strong signal to me. Why aren't you focused on profit now? I mean, you're a for-profit company. You're traded on the stock exchange, publicly. Why aren't you focused on maximizing profits for your shareholders? And if you're not, you should be doing that. And if you aren't, that's something you shouldn't reap the benefits that are at the top end of the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you make of Joe Biden, Scott? Joe Biden going to go join the picket line at UAW today. Donald Trump will be there tomorrow, though it was Trump's idea first, but who cares at this point? But I'm just curious what you make of the fact that the union, which you would think would be kind of, at least back in the day, a no-brainer from a liberal standpoint, kind of government, liberals, unions, the whole thing, but they're not with Biden as much this time around. What's your take on all of that?
Their companies, the companies in which they work, are shrinking and contracting because they're making political decisions as opposed to for-profit decisions. I mean, with all the subsidies, David, with all the support by government over the decades, how much market share is there for electric vehicles? Less than 3%. I mean, the American consumer should be making the decision about what they want to buy and purchase. And if you're in the auto manufacturing business, you ought to be developing a business plan that satisfies and meets the consumer demand, not trying to manipulate it. I mean, these companies have sat with government for decades, manipulating CAFE standards to gain market share. And they're trying to force the American consumer to buy electric vehicles when they don't want to. Maybe that makes sense in their urban markets and dense markets, but in Oklahoma and Texas and elsewhere in this country, it just doesn't work at the present time. And so if you're going to focus your entire business plan on being an extension of government, you shouldn't be paid millions of dollars as CEO to do that. You're just a fancy lobbyist. Yeah. You're not a business CEO. And so these union employees ought to make this an issue, to force the companies to make those kind of tough decisions.
We know you fought waste in the bureaucracy during your time as EPA administrator, and we're looking at another government shutdown. But when you were EPA administrator, you told workers that they had better come to work during the shutdown. So did your workers not get a paid vacation funded by our tax dollars? And I do have one viewer that actually reached out to me on Getter and said that he actually was docked 6 days of pay when Democrats were in office. That was by Obama. But during your time, what was your observation?
Well, Gina, it was pre-pandemic, so I was not there during the government the pandemic. You're speaking about the government shutdown that's being contemplated presently with respect to the budget. Is that right? So in that instance, yes. I mean, we had individuals that were working remotely, but we were at the office. We were working during that time frame, and we had essential employees that were identified that had to be at the agency to lead, obviously, the efforts of the government. And so every agency will do that. Every agency will establish essential workers during a government shutdown to ensure that basic essential services are met by whatever agency is focused upon, and those employees should be there to do that work.
Scott, before we leave here, I got about less than a minute left, maybe about 30 seconds or so. What can be done moving forward on reversing some of what Biden has done from an EPA standpoint, from a climate change standpoint, from a carbon emissions standpoint? I mean, they're trying to totally remake everything, remake the economy. The left is. How do you combat it? What do you do?
With power generation, we need to focus more of our efforts on nuclear. I mean, our power grid is vulnerable presently because of the move to renewables. The inconsistency of solar and wind with respect to power generation. We need more nuclear in the power generation context. And with respect to energy, we have technology, David, as you know, that allows us to develop all the resources we have as a country. We need to continue diversification, rely upon our own production, not be reliant upon foreign powers, and ensure that people have access to low, affordable energy. And that's changing because of the Biden policies.
You know, that's a lot of the same things you said back when I believe I interviewed you on the main stage at CPAC. You were talking about nuclear then, and you're still talking about it now. Scott Pruitt, thank you so much for being here. Coming up, it is time to spill some tea, and so we're going to bring that to you. We'll be back in just a moment.
Freedom-loving patriots are falling in love with America's barbecue sauce, Red State Barbecue. Red State's 8 different sauces are perfect for whatever sparks your barbecue palate. Visit redstatebbq.com. That's redstatebbq.com and use promo code RAV10 for 10% off.
Red State Barbecue.
Let's spill some tea.
Sponsored, of course, by Artillery Tea Company. You can go to artilleryteaco.com. Use your promo code RAV. That'll give you your 10% off. Artillery Tea, great stuff. All natural, whole leaf. That matters to me, that it's all natural. The tea bags are chemical free. Each tea bag can be used 2 times. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase helps veterans and first responders. Artilleryteaco.com, promo code RAV. That'll give you your 10% off. And waking up every morning smelling this tea, it's going to give you a better day. Right, Terrance?
Absolutely. The tea is super good. In fact, I had some this morning. I had the Moab, the mother of all bombs, with caffeine. I needed the caffeine.
Yes.
Listen to this, folks. On National Voter Registration Day, Vote.org, which is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan voting registration technology platform in the country, reported the highest numbers of new registrations since 2020. This was a 23% jump from last year. But was it because our leadership or mainstream media galvanized people to prepare for the polls, or was it because President Biden has been making his own case for why he needs to be drained from the swamp? No, it was actually because Taylor Swift told us to register. Here's the headline, folks. A Taylor Swift Instagram post helped drive a surge in voter registration. That's the headline. Here's the story. The pop culture icon posted a short message on Instagram encouraging her 272 million followers to register to vote. She also added a link to vote.org. The organization reported more than 35,000 new registrations as a result, with a 1,226% jump in activity in the hour after that post. The number of 18-year-olds registered was more than double what it was last year. David and Gina, we're going to bring you guys back in for this. So, David, we'll start with you. If people need Taylor Swift to express the urgency of the 2024 election for them to move, then what does that really say about our leadership, or more broadly, where we are as a country?
Yeah, I mean, I weep for the country if it's going to take Taylor Swift to get people to the polls. But here's the thing, it makes me think about the church in this country and how apathetic they are, specifically the pastors in this country. I mean, they're scared of getting of their tax exempt status being taken away because they're a nonprofit 501c3, so they don't think they can preach from the pulpit. That's crap. That's crap. Of course they can. And number one. But beyond all of that, we need a new black robe regiment in this country.
That's what I was going to say. Yes. Yes. I'm so glad you
Gina,
brought that
take
up.
It away.
Well,
take it away. That's my transition to you. Go for it.
The Black Robe Regiment used to be basically the coalition of pastors who helped voters understand from a Christian perspective where their vote should go, right? They set standards, they interviewed candidates, they did all those things. Then they created this artificial, it's a lie, there is no separation of church and state. That's actually a lie. If you don't believe me, you go find it in the Constitution, because it's a lie. But they created this false narrative of the separation of church and state. It was never to be about that. And they started sending these scary letters to pastors that would preach from the pulpit or have candidates in or things like that. And so the longer that, the more watered down and the more milk fed our Christendom has become, and this is the reason why I'm often preaching against those kinds of preachers that kind of give you all this happy, clappy, claim it, name it, prosperity gospel stuff, is because they don't know the history of the church. They don't know the importance of the Black Robe Regiment. They don't take action politically. So when you have a pastor who's saying, I'm not going to talk politics from the pulpit, you better start asking him some questions if he understands the role of God and the role of our faith from a biblical perspective, because those are important questions to ask.
Well,
no, I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to say, and what they were doing is they were preaching from the pulpit about the political, moral, ideological issues of the day, and they were explaining why, in essence, Americans needed to rise up. And there would have been no American Revolution without those pastors preaching from the pulpit, Terrance.
Yep.
I'll just add, when I say my Pledge of Allegiance, I talk about liberty and justice for all, and I find that liberty and justice for all in my Bible.
Absolutely. And there's no comma between one nation and under God. You know how people say one nation under God in the pledge? There's no comma there. It's one nation under God.
And another thing, no, I'll leave it at that. Sunny Side Up is coming up next. Stick around for that. American Sunrise continues.
Tired of the same old mass-produced, globalist-supporting tea companies? Artillery Tea Company is the Patriot source of natural premium tea. Visit artillerytco.com and use promo code RAV for 10% off.
Time for our Sunny Side Up series. Guys, today's story is about a man named Jeff who returned home from a trip to find his prized garden destroyed by an intruder. He set up a surveillance camera to catch the culprit, and over many days and weeks, this is what he found. Take a look.
So back from the original trip, I had saw that cantaloupe plants were destroyed, chewed down to the stems. Prior to leaving for the trip, I was excited to come back to some potential like blooms. And when I came back, it was all just, stems of the plant. I tried everything. I put a fence a little bit higher. I put some wood around the bottom of the fence to prevent them from digging under it. But no matter what I did, they were always a step ahead of me. I got a notification on my phone, and out of nowhere pops up this groundhog. I was like, wow, it's a groundhog. It's like I had no idea, because I never had an issue with groundhogs in the past. I was shocked to see it in the camera, and even more shocked to see how cool he looked. He just had so much swagger. He was like popping up into the camera each day and saying like, yeah, it's me, I'm eating your vegetables, what are you gonna do about it? That was kind of his attitude, and I was like, this guy's got swagger. The name Chunk was very fitting, because he was taking chunks out of the vegetables and the plants and like moving on to the next one. So the plants that actually did survive and have the vegetables on it, like a nice red juicy tomato, you can't wait to eat it. And you come back and you look in your garden and there's a chunk out of it. So that's how the name came about. The social media fans, they had the same reaction I did. And of course, like as time went on and I was posting more and more of these videos, it really hit me that these videos are actually making an impact on people, the sense of positive vibe. He brought a girlfriend to the camera, Nibbles, and they had offsprings the following year, Nugget, Chip, and Chibbles. The garden was so small at the time for all of us, so I decided I needed to make them their own garden the following year. So that's what I did.
Those are the fattest little groundhogs I've ever seen. I have to tell you, I saw a lot of groundhogs. I'm fascinated with them for some reason at the Lake of the Ozarks on the golf course. There's tons of them, so I was watching them. But now these little groundhogs, Chunk and his family and friends, they're superstars, right, guys?
Absolutely. Making lemonade out of lemons there for the guy with the video. I like that.
Absolutely. All right. And coming up on tomorrow's American Sunrise, Tara Dahl and Bible history guy Jim Mosley, Kaylin Dorr, and later this week, Laura Trump's going to join us in studio. Guys, I'm sad the show is over, but David Brody wants to do 2 more hours. So got that going for us.
You're on your own.
War Room with Steve Bannon is next. You all join Miranda today at 4 o'clock. You go boldly now and live the truth.
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
In 5 days to reach an agreement to avert a government shutdown. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy still faces an uphill battle as hard right conservatives in his party are looking to use the shutdown as leverage for spending cuts. Meanwhile, the Senate will begin moving ahead with its own short-term solution. Let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, what's the latest you're hearing on the negotiations so far?
Yeah, no better news than what I brought to you yesterday, Mika. The idea that lawmakers, even though they worked over the weekend on the House side, don't seem any closer to a true consensus. We did hear from Speaker McCarthy yesterday, though, who continued to sound notes of optimism. I think what's going to be fascinating this week, though, is, yes, watching the ways that McCarthy still tries to herd the cats within his conference, but also seeing the ways that they end up interacting with this Senate plan that Schumer and other key leaders are still trying to cobble together. I was told that staff on the Senate side are still working through the night to try to come to what this agreement could look like. And again, we're talking about a continuing resolution here, something that would just keep the lights on for an extra 30 or maybe 45 days to buy these folks some time to actually do these appropriations bills. They are not fast processes here. That's why they're in the time buying business. But if McCarthy were to take this lifeline that the Senate could extend to him, yes, it would help on the government funding front, but no, it would not help him in terms of actually keeping his job, because just the very word continuing resolution, or a CR as we shorthanded on the Hill, is something that could have several of his members, including Matt Gaetz, trigger a motion to vacate, fire him from his job, and then you're back in a chaos standpoint. I think that's the thing that I'm generally keeping in mind here, is that the shutdown is one piece of this, but the back half of it is the open question of if McCarthy will keep his job. And look, Lemire asked a good question this morning on Way Too Early. If not McCarthy, then who? I'll tell you what I told him, which is I have no idea, but the chaos for some of these conservative members is truly the point, and that's chaos certainly in the House.
May be finding themselves in a similar situation to the situation that I found myself in, or just that they want to make that break. It's possible. We can't. And what I think is, in my opinion, again, what I think is damaging in ways is isolating the people that come out and then questioning why they did. It is hard to come out. It was hard to find my way out because of what we said. I had financial limitations and I did have other counsel, but it was also hard coming out on the outside because I didn't know if I'd be welcomed by people. So I think that, if we can create and foster an environment where people feel that they're welcomed and that there is a life on the other side, which is one of the more eye-opening parts of this experience for me too is that there are good people in this world that want to help and that are there and that have similar interests that we do, that